Hey guys, welcome to the second video in our secure DB Auth series. In this video specifically, I'll be showing you how to build an email password login flow that would use hash passwords saved in the database. So what we're going to be doing in this part of the video is I'll show you how to build the form UI, the one you saw earlier in the intro video. I'll show you how to build the sign up form UI. Then we'll take a look at how to hash those passwords on the client. I'll show you how to do that using a very cool JS library. And lastly, I'll show you how to save those hash passwords to the database and perform verification for the sign up flow and also for the sign in flow. So that is what we'll be taking a look at in this video. My name is Confident and I'm a developer advocate at AppSmith. Without any delay, let's get started. Alright, so I'd like to start by mentioning that I am running on a self-hosted version of AppSmith. As you can see, this is not the official domain. I bought a really cool domain, appsmith.fun, and I have AppSmith running in a Docker container as well as the database we'll be making use of, which is Postgres running in a container on the same machine. So I just wanted that to be clear as we go ahead to building that in case you have questions about the domain you see up here. But everything we're going to be showing you in this video works on the cloud version and also of course on your self-hosted edition of AppSmith. So let's start by building the form login UI. For that, we would need a couple of widgets. The first widget we will need is the tab widget. So let's grab a tab widget. All right, and I'm just going to place this right here. So we have the tab widget here. We have two tabs. We would want one for the sign in tab and we also want another one for the sign up tab. So the first is going to be the sign in tab and the second is going to be for the sign up tab. All right, the default tab is going to be the sign in tab, so this is going to be sign in and we are good to go. For the tabs, we need a couple of fields, so we need a bunch of inputs. I am going to grab a form widget first, so let's grab a form widget. All right, and I'll place this inside of the sign in tab. So let's start with the sign in tab. When we're done with the sign in tab, we'll move over to setting up the sign up tab. So this is the form. I'm just going to expand it so that it takes up all of the space. Then the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that this form blends into the tab, because right now you can see there's a bit of shadow around the form before you get to the tab widget. So let's make sure that blends in well. So I'm going to go to the style tab, and what I'm going to do is take off the border color and make sure it has no box shadow. And now if you take a look at this blends right into the tab widget, which is exactly what we want. All right, so let's go on to customize this form. So this form is going to be first for the sign in workflow. So this is going to be sign in. All right, and then we need a couple of inputs. We need one for the email. We also need one for the password. So let's grab an input widget, place this right here, expand it all the way. Looks good. First thing I'm going to do is rename the widget. The default name is input1. I need to change this to something else that will be more memorable. So let's call this email for the sign in workflow. That's what I'm going to name this widget. And I'm going to set the input type to email. Then for the label, let's call this email. And we also want this to be required, else the users will be able to submit this form without actually typing in their emails. That's not what we want, so let's make this required. All right, making this required, and you can see form submission is disabled until users actually going to type in their emails using the email input. The next thing we want to do is set up an input for the password. So let's grab another input widget. I'm going to place this here and expand this all the way as well. For this widget, default name is input1. We need to change this to password sign in. All right, that's for the sign in flow. Then I'm going to set the type to password, and I'm just going to set the label to password as well. All right, and we also need to make this required. So we have the sign in form done. Now let's move over to the sign up form. So I'm just going to copy the entire form widget. I have the form widget highlighted. I'm going to copy this over with Ctrl+C, head over to the sign up tab, and let's paste this in using Ctrl+V. All right, so we have that form here and everything looks good. I need to change a couple of things, of course. So this should say sign up. All right, that looks good. Then I will need to change the names of these widgets. So instead of saying email sign in copy, I'm going to change this to email sign up, so that we know that this widget is for the sign up workflow. And I'll also do the same for the password. This is going to be the sign up password. The other thing I'll do that will be different from the sign in form is I'll need to copy over this password input and paste it in again. That's because we want users to be able to retype their password to be able to confirm it. So this is going to be the widget to help them confirm their password. I'm just going to call this password2_su, and let's update the label to say confirm password. All right, so that looks good, and I think we have a really good looking form. Before we go, we want users to actually be able to retype the password they typed in the first password input into the second. So we need to add some validation. So let's go to the second password input and scroll down to where you have valid. We can write a JavaScript expression to validate this input. So let's do that. We want the password signup.text to be the same as the password to signup.text. So I'm just going to copy this over so that I don't have to type so much. All right, so this is going to be password to signup.text. And we can test this in. So if the user actually goes in to type in a password, so let's start with the email, for example. So let's say abc@gmail.com, and then types in a password here of abc. You can see the user is not allowed to submit until they actually go in to confirm their password. If they type something else, let's say 123, you can see it says it's invalid until they actually go in to type that same password abc, and then they can actually go ahead to submit this form. So we have the form UI done, and this looks really nice. We'll continue to take a look at how to create password hashes on the client, and then lastly we'll take a look at how to save them to the databases. But first, let's continue with taking a look at how to create password hashes. Alright, so to create password hashes, we would need a few libraries. The first we're going to be using is called Bcrypt. It's a really cool library to create hashes, and you can see it's really popular on NPM because it gets 1.6 million downloads every week, which is insane. So we'll be making use of this library inside of AppSmith to create password hashes. And to have this library installed on AppSmith today, what you need to do is go to the Explorer, then you need to go to Libraries and click on the plus button. You want to grab a UMD build of this library, so you need to head over to JS Deliver or any CDN of your choice. So I'm going to open up JS Deliver, all right, and let's go search for Bcrypt. So this is going to be Bcrypt. We have Bcrypt.js, and I'm just going to copy the UDM build URL from here. Let's head back to AppSmith, and I'm going to paste this in right here. And once I hit the install button, you can see that this has been installed. This is available using the accessor decode.io. In case you forget that, you can always check that here in the list. So this is decode.io, and that's how we would be able to access Bcrypt. So let's actually use this library to create password hashes and verify them. For that, I would need to create a JavaScript file. So I'm going to go to the queries and JS section, click on the plus button, and let's create a JavaScript file. I'm going to call this app.js. All right, I will start with the function to actually create hashes. So we're going to be using the hash sync method on Bcrypt. So let's call this create hash. All right, it is not going to be an async function, and we'll need to pass in a password we want to create a hash for. So this is going to be password, and let's set this to a default value of ABC for now. And here I am going to return the hash. So let's say return. This is going to be decode.io. Don't forget decode.io.bcrypt. All right, and we're going to use the hash sync function, and then we're going to pass in the password and give this a salt. So this is going to be password and a salt of 10, and we should be good to go. So this is going to create a hash of the ABC password we're providing right now. So I can go run this, and you can see that we have a hash generated, which is exactly what we want. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to verify hashes given a password. So let's go on to add a function to do that. So let's call this function verify hash, and this is going to take in a password. So I'm going to use our default ABC password for now, since we're testing out the function. Then this also needs a hash. So this is going to be hash. And I'm going to copy over this hash from right here. So let's copy this over and paste this in. And then we also need to work on the function body. So the function body is going to be making use of the compare sync method, and we'll need to pass in the password and the hash to the function, and it's going to tell us if the password matches the hash or the other way around. So let's return decode io dot bcrypt dot compare sync. All right, I will pass in the password, and we also want to give this the hash. All right, so this is looking nice, and we can go try this out by running the function, and you can see that this evaluates to true. That's because the hash provided to this function was created using the password ABC. Now if we change this to something else, let's say ABC123, and we try to rerun this function, this should tell us that they don't compare anymore. It's not the same anymore. So we have the verify hash password done, and we have the compare passwords done. I'm just going to delete all of these default values we're passing in, and we would have these two functions cleaned up. So this is the function to verify and create a hash. The next thing we're going to do is we want to be able to control the user's login session. So for that, we need a library to help us do that. And we're going to be using the JSON Web Token library. So we can go check this out on npm. All right, and as you can see, this is also a popular library to create tokens. So we'll be using this library to control the user's section so that the user is only logged in for about a period of just 1 hour, and this receives 12 million weekly downloads. So it's a really popular library. We're also going to be making use of this in our application. So let's close this window. I'm also going to close the other window. Now the beauty of it is that we already have this library supported on AppSmith out of the box. So what I'm going to do is go to the libraries section, click on the plus button, and scroll down to the second library actually here, which says JSON Web Token. So I'm going to click on the download button, and we should have the library downloaded and accessible as JSON Web Token. And you can see it's also available here as JSON Web Token. So we're going to be using that to create the user's session token, and let's actually go ahead with it. So we need to create a function called create token, and this would require the user's email. So this is going to be called create token. All right, and we want to supply the user's email. And what this library is going to do, or what this function is going to do, is return that user's token given the email that will expire in 1 hour. So let's say return JSON Web Token dot sign, and we want to pass in a payload, which will be the user's email. So this is email. And for our salt, I'm just going to type in some text like secret. You want to have a better salt, of course, and then we want to pass in some parameters to this function. So the only thing I want for my signature is I want it to be able to expire in just 1 hour. So we want to pass an expires in, and this is going to be 1 hour. So this is going to be 60 times 60, which will give us 1 hour converted to seconds. So this is exactly what we want. And if I go to run this, so let's pass in a default email of abc@gmail.com, and then when I run this, all right, let's run this. You can see that we have a token created for this user email that expires in 1 hour. So this is exactly what we want, and we are good to go. So up next, we'll take a look at how to save hashed passwords to the database so that we can actually complete the sign-in workflow and also the sign-up workflow you saw earlier. So let's check that out. All right, so the first thing we need to do is connect our application to the database, because we haven't done so right now. So let's do that by heading to the data sources tab. I'm going to click on the plus button. Let's scroll down to where it says PostgreSQL. I'm going to name my database my PG. All right. And I need to supply the host address. This is going to be the Docker IP address, because I actually have my database running inside of a Docker container, the same as my AppSmith instance. Then for the port, this is going to be 5432. Then for the username and password, it's going to be the default username and password. So this is going to be database name, Postgres, username, Postgres, password, PG. And I can test this, and we have a valid connection. So I'm going to save this and we're good to go. Now, the first query I want to write is one that will allow us to create a user, because on the database, if you take a look at it, let's go to take a look at the database. We have two tables, and we have a user table, and we want to be able to create users that are having hashed passwords. So let's do that. Don't forget, we have two columns in this database. We have the email column, we also have the password column as well. So let's go to create a new query, and I'm going to call this query the sign up user query. So this is going to be sign up. All right. And for the template, we're going to use the create template, because we're actually creating a resource or a record on the database. So this is going to be the users table right here. And we have two columns. We have the email column. We also have the password column. And we also need to supply values for both of these columns. Actually, I'm just going to delete everything out. The first param we're going to be saving is going to be the email. So let's do that. I'm going to be passing this as a parameter to the execution of this query. So and I can access this using this.params.email. It's going to be sent to the value, the actual value is going to be sent to this query at runtime, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. Then the second thing we need to do is we want to pass the password, which is going to be hashed. So this is going to be this.params.phash. All right, and that is going to be for the hash password. If I turn off prepared statement, you can see that both of these right now evaluate to undefined, but at runtime we are actually going to pass in the exact email and phash for the user we are trying to create. So let's go on to creating a function that will handle the sign up workflow, and for that we need to head back to the JavaScript file. So we can actually do that by come in here and click on the app.js file, or we could navigate much quicker using keyboard shortcuts. So that would have been Ctrl P, and we search for app.js, and we would have been able to open the app.js file. So now let's continue to create the sign up function, and I'm going to start by typing out the function body. So this is going to be sign up, and this is not going to have any parameters. The first thing we want to do is grab the user's email and password from the sign up form. So let's go to the form, and if we go to the sign up tab, you can see we have the user's email in the email_su input. Then for the password, this is going to come from the password_su input. So let's head back to app.js. All right, and what we want to do is grab those values. So this is going to be const email, which is going to come from email_su.text, and then the password, const password, which is going to come from password su.text. All right, so we have the sign up email and password. Now the next thing we want to do is create a hash for the given password. So this is going to be called const phash, and we're going to use the create hash function we wrote out earlier. So I'm going to say this.create hash to use the create hash function, and then I'm going to pass in the password. So this is going to be password, and we should be good to go. So if I return this, you should see we have the password hash. So I can say return phash. All right, and if I go ahead to run this, we should have the password hash, which you can see right here. But what we want to do is actually save all of these details to the database, right? So let's make use of the sign up query. So this is going to be signup.run. Then we want to pass in the email, which is a parameter to the function, and also the p hash. So remember I said we'll be passing this to the function, and that is going to replace the email and password variables we have right here within the query. All right, so that's for the run function. When this function is done, we want to let the user know that the sign up flow was successful. So we can add a .then step, and here we want to let the user know his account was created. So we can say a show alert, and we want to say account created. All right, and this is going to have an alert type of success. All right, then when that's done, we want to create a token for this user, because this user is going to be logged in, right? So this is going to be .then. Another step, we want to create a token and save it into the local store on the client, which is the application. So we're going to use the store value function, and we're going to save this in a key called token. So this is going to be token. All right, and we actually want to create the token using the create token function we wrote out earlier. So let's copy the function name. So it's going to be this dot create token, and then we want to pass in the user's email. So this is going to be email. All right, and the next thing we want to do is navigate that user to the home page of our application. So right now we've been working on the login page, which has the sign in, sign up form. In fact, I'm just going to rename this page to login. And the next thing we want to do is create a home page which the user will be able to access his data. So this is going to be create a new page. All right, we have a blank page, and I'm going to call this the home page. All right, so we have two pages, the login page with the sign in, sign up workflow, and actually a home page. So let's navigate the user to the home page after the login is successful. So this is going to be .then. We want to navigate this user to the home page. So this is going to be navigate to, and this is going to be the home page. And lastly, if there were any errors, we want to let the user know there was an error in the sign up process. So let's do a .catch. And if there's an error, we want to do a show alert and show the error message. And this is going to be an error message. So we have this all done and everything looks good. So we have the sign up function complete, and we can test this by linking this function up to the UI. All right, so let's head back to the sign up form, and for the submit button, we want to set it up such that whenever it's clicked on, it actually executes the sign up function. So let's have the submit button selected. For the on-click action, this is going to execute a JavaScript function in the app.js file, and this is going to be the sign up function. All right, that looks good. So let's actually try to sign up. So I'm going to sign up a user. So let's say run at appsmith.com, password. All right, I'm going to retype that same password. All right, then we go to hit the submit button, and you can see that the user's account was created and we have been automatically navigated to the home page, which is exactly what we want. Now, if we go check the database, I am going to reload this. You notice that we have that user created. You can see we have user created, and that user's password has been hashed. This is exactly what we want. Now let's wrap things up by fixing the sign-in workflow so that users who already signed up can come in to sign into the app again. So for that, we would need a query, and let's go create a new query using the mypg data source we connected earlier. So I'm going to create a new query, and I'm going to call this query find user. All right, and this query is going to be a select query. We're going to be selecting all users from the users table, whereby we want to filter using the user's email so that we're able to find that user and figure out if the logged in user, if the user trying to log in is supplying the correct password. So this is going to be select star from users, where email is equal to an email parameter passed into this function. So this is going to be this.params email. And that's all we would need for this function. I'm going to turn off prepared statement because we're using a where clause right here, and right now this is undefined. So let's actually write the sign in function to make use of this query. So I'm going to head to app.js file, all right, and I'll collapse the sign up function. We need to add the sign in function now. So this is sign in, and similarly it will not require any parameters. It's going to be very similar to the sign up function. So I'm going to grab the email and password from right here. Let's collapse this one more time and I'll paste that in here. I'll need to make a few changes. So this is going to be the sign in email widget. And we also need to use the sign in password input as well. All right, so now that we have the user's email and password, the next thing we want to do is find out if that user which is trying to log in exists in the database, and for that we'll be making use of the find user query. So this is going to be find user. So let's say return find user.run, and we're going to pass in that email. So this is going to be email, and we can test this out by going to the form and supplying an email we know exists in the database. So let's say run at appsmith.com. And let's also type in his password. All right, so let's head back to app.js, and we can test this by running this function. So I'm going to execute this function, and you can see that this actually returns an array containing the user object that has the user's email and password, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to save this object in a variable called user, and then we want to check in the client to find out if this user actually is supplying the right password. So let's do that. So let's say const, I'm going to save this in a user variable. I'm using the array destructuring syntax. All right, and here I forgot to add an equal. All right, so we have that saved in the user variable, and the next thing we want to do is check if we actually have a valid user from the database. So let's say if user, and then we want to check if the user is supplying a valid password. We're going to be using the verify hash password, or the verify hash function we created earlier. So I'm going to copy this over, and we're going to say this dot verify hash. We want to pass in the user's password. Then we want to compare that with the password coming from the database. So this is going to be user. I'm going to put a question mark just in case this user actually doesn't exist in the database. That is, our app user actually supplied an invalid user email. Then we want to access that user's password. All right. So this is going to check if that user exists and if the user's password is valid. If that's the case, we want to create a token for this user so that the user has a user session which will expire in 1 hour, and then navigate the user to the home page. So let's say store value. All right, this is going to be token, and we want to create a token using the create token function. All right, so this is going to be this dot create token, and I'll pass in the user's email. All right, that's good to go. Then we want to navigate this user to the home page. So this is going to be navigate to, and this will be the home page. All right. If this user doesn't exist, or if the password is invalid, what we want to do is show an error on the app UI. So we have an else case here, which will do exactly that. So I want to do a show alert and say invalid email or password. All right, and this is going to have an alert type of error, and we are good to go for this function. So we have the sign in function, and this is going to verify if the user exists in the database and if the password supplied from the user on the UI actually matches the user we have on the database. So let's test this out. I'm going to head back to the UI, and we want to hook up the submit button to execute the sign up function, or actually the sign in function you saw earlier. So this is on click, we want to execute a function from the app.js file, and this is going to be the sign-in function. So we have Ron's email and password typed in. I'm going to hit the submit button. Seems like we have an error right here. Let's check it out. All right, I figured out what the error is. I wasn't waiting for this query to return, so I need to add an await here, and I need to make this function an async function. All right, so that should fix it. Now let's head back to the UI and hit the submit button, and you can see that user was found, verified, and now we have been navigated into the home page of the application, which is exactly what we want. And if I go bring in a text widget here, let's do a quick check. You'd see that we actually have that user's token saved into the local store. So this is apps.store.token, and that is the user's login token, which is exactly what we want. All right, so we have been able to build the UI for the sign in and sign up workflow, and we've also written all of the code required to create a user's password, hash it, save it into the database, and do the verification of the user password, as well as creating a token to manage the user's session. So this is all we did in this video. All right, in the next video, we'll take a look at how to implement row level security on the database so that we get to benefit from all of the authorization features that come with it. So go check out the video right here to see how to set up row level security on the database. And if you missed the first video, which is the intro video, go check it out right here for more context. All right, that'll be all for today's video. Till I see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.